Welcome to the STS-61 Post-Landing News Conference. We're going to be doing this in split format this morning. We'll be starting off with participants at KSC and then switching over to JSC for participant out there. The KSC participants from your left are Jeremiah W. Pearson, Associate Administrator for Space Flight, NASA Headquarters; Dr. Daniel Weedman, Director of Astrophysics, NASA Headquarters; Robert B. Seek, Launch Director, Kennedy Space Center. And participating from the Johnson Space Center in Houston will be Randy Brinkley, STS-61 Mission Director. And here at KSC, we'll start off with Mr. Pearson.
Yeah, well, this last couple of weeks has been an exciting culmination of a lot of training, a lot of planning, and a lot of work by a lot of people. And I think we can say that at this point, we've got a terrific success. Just a point of trivia, this mission was launched on the 2nd of December, which is what's happened with all the shuttles. The 4 flights so far launched in December have all been on December 2nd. I left the crew a few minutes ago. They're all in high spirits and are really excited about the success.
Dr. Williams?
Well, speaking for the community that the Astrophysics Division serves, all I can say is thanks on behalf of the millions of people that want to know more about the universe. You've provided a tremendous service. There's no product more valuable than inspiration and knowledge, and this mission inspired us all, and it laid the basis for tremendous leaps in our knowledge of the universe. You've left us with a telescope that's 10 times more powerful than it was before. I can promise you we'll proceed to do great things with it. Thanks again.
Mr. Seek?
Well, from our standpoint, this was a great way to end a great year. The processing team here is particularly proud of the fact that they were able to provide the crew and the flight team a clean vehicle to work this complex mission with. But that's been the case for all the missions this year. They were safe, they were successful. We delivered quality hardware to orbit to make that possible. And as we look ahead into next year with the 8 flights that are planned and the challenges that we have with the budget and our initiative to continue to be efficient, I think we can do that. We demonstrated the capability this year that we can still fly safe and successful missions with this great team that just demonstrated their ability on this mission.
We're now switching to the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
We're here at Johnson Space Center live with Randy Brinkley, the STS-61 Mission Director. A statement from Randy, please.
Well, it's a great privilege to be part of this historical undertaking, and I think that all of us on the STS-61 team would like to express our appreciation for the support and confidence that we have received from the public during this entire mission. It means a great deal to all of us.
Okay, thank you, Randy. We'll return now to Kennedy Space Center and begin taking questions there.
Okay. Sue?
This is for General Pearson. This has been a marvelously successful mission. The question is, what do you do for an encore? Maybe the astrophysicists don't need an encore. They are satisfied and very happy. But you have to also satisfy the public and the Congress. How can you maintain interest in upcoming missions after this tremendous one?
Well, I think we just have to keep proceeding ahead with the schedule that we have, looking forward to the space station in the future. This has been an exciting mission because everybody could almost participate with the astronauts. We're not going to be able to do that all the time, but just getting the shuttle up and down and the terrific missions we have, like the the Russian rendezvous and things like that, I think will be equally exciting.
Bill?
Bill Harwood, CBS for Dr. Weidman. Others have been asked this and answered it, so I'll ask you the same question. Where will Hubble stand in the constellation of telescopes, assuming all the repairs check out here in a couple of months? I mean, how significant an instrument will this be for astronomers and for astrophysics?
Greatest significance of the Hubble Space Telescope, as we now assume it to be fixed, is that it can take images of the most distant objects in the universe far, far better than any other capability we can imagine. So we'll get pictures that are 10 times better than we could obtain from ground-based telescopes. We'll get pictures that will allow us to see the formation of galaxies in the very early stages of the universe. Those are just examples. We'll get comparable pictures showing solar systems in formation. We'll get comparable pictures of the planets in our own solar system, so that there's no doubt that the capabilities of Hubble Space Telescope as they now exist live up to the grand dreams we had when this telescope was designed 20 years ago.
Just a quick follow-up. Assuming the instruments all work correctly, how long do you think it would take before you can confirm or deny the existence of black holes?
Well, no, that's right. That is going to require the use of one of the spectrographs whose images are repaired with the COSTAR. And my suspicion is that we'll be taking the first spectra that will try to confirm or deny the existence of black holes probably sometime this spring. We'll be zeroing in on the central regions of some galaxies, trying to find the evidence of very high velocity gas motions which would reveal the presence of a black hole in those central regions.
Todd?
Todd Halverson of Florida Today for Dr. Weidman. Assuming that all the optical fixes do work, what are the top priority research projects you want to tackle once you're up and running?
Well, Mr. Harwood hit on several of them. We want to see as far as it's possible to see. We want to see the most distant objects in the universe which have forms, and those would be the earliest galaxies as they were forming. That's one of the premier objectives. That's what the Wide Field Planetary Camera 2 is meant for. We want to look deep into the heart of fairly nearby galaxies to see if these gigantic black holes exist there. To do that, we must use spectroscopy, and the spectrographs have been fixed by COSTAR. We want to look deep inside regions where new stars are being born and presumably planetary systems in the vicinities of those stars. We want to look for the dark, dusty regions around new stars in which we might hypothesize that planets were being born. We have such a list. Remember, we have 1,000 astronomers lined up to use this telescope. So I'm not going to give you all the other 997 things they want to do with it.
Jim, do you have your hand up?
Jim McKenna with Aviation Week for General Pearson. What lessons do you take from the process that produced this success, and how do you apply those lessons to the other activities in NASA?
Oh, I think we take a lot of lessons here. We've learned that by experience, if you plan, train, replan, retrain, you come out with success. And this is the lesson I take away from this. And I think in addition to that, I think the independent review process is a good process, where we come out and have somebody else take a look at what we're doing, just in this kind of difficult business, that you have a fresh look at it. I think that's proved itself out, and I think we'll continue to do that.
We'll take one more question here before we switch to Goddard. Irene?
Irene Brown with DPI. To follow on Jim's question for a minute, are there some specific applications from this mission that you think about applying for the space station project? Can you think about ways to bring the focus and resources and collective will that the Hubble mission mustered to a bigger program like space station?
Oh yeah, it's obvious that we've proved we can work in space. So we take those lessons away. We take the lessons away that we plan and replan, train, retrain, and use that kind of knowledge to successfully assemble a space station.
We have some questions at Goddard.
Yes, this is A.R. Hogan, Writers Plus Newsroom and Prince George's Journal. First, for either Mr. Brinkley or Dr. Weidman, how happy were you with the coordination and support between Goddard and the rest of the project on the Hubble repair efforts? And I have 2 follow-ups, please.
Well, speaking from the standpoint of the Astrophysics Division, you should remember that this has been a coordination and an effort that's been going on for over 2 years. It's been going on actually just about since the time that HST was first launched. And there's no way to say enough about the degree of cooperation, collaboration that we achieved. I think it was astounding to all of us, the closeness with which the manned space group and the scientists at Goddard worked together to make this mission happen. So I can only state that we've been extremely satisfied with the cooperation at all levels.
Okay. Do you have any inkling on any lessons that might apply to make things run even more smoothly during the, I believe, February 1997 second HST servicing mission? Anything that would be Goddard specific that could be done even better?
Well, if we can talk the same people into hanging around 3 more years and working for us then as worked for us on this last one, then we'll be home free.
Okay. And last question from Goddard. Could you give a little bit of perspective on how satisfying it was to have such a relatively intense coverage of this mission, that the public was getting much more information via the broadcast and print media about this flight than most of the other shuttle flights of recent years? Is that satisfying to you, or just give me some indication of what your reaction is?
Who's that directed to?
Whoever would like to take it.
Well, I thought it was really interesting to see all the coverage. I was right there in the mission control a lot of the time, and it's gratifying that people appreciate the effort that went into this mission, and it was very exciting to me as even an insider, and I assume it was to everybody else.
We're back here at KSC for questions directed to KSC participants. Phil?
Phil Chen, Earth News for General Pearson. There was a lot of intense pressure and attention on this mission, both from outside NASA and within NASA. What concerns do you have for the next missions down the line that they haven't gotten as much attention or within the agency or as much access to facilities because of this mission taking up so much attention and resources?
Well, that's a good point, but I think we've also kept our eyes on the ball here for the next missions. You know, you compartmentalize in something like this and go concentrate on one at a time, but meanwhile, there are a lot of other people that are concentrating on each mission as it comes along. I think we've learned a lot from this mission, as I've said before, and that you plan effectively and train effectively, and that's going to carry on to all the missions in the future. So I think we're better off.
Dick Uliano?
Dick Uliano from AP Radio. General, if this mission with its intensive training, full tilt approach provides the blueprint for future missions, then doesn't it get more expensive to operate this already expensive program? And if so, how much more?
No, I don't think that follows. We have the people there, and you train intensely for all the missions. I think we were more focused on this one, and that'll apply to the future, but I don't see it costing any more in people, time, or money.
Ross Cabot?
I have a quick question and a quick follow-up. That sort of along those lines for General Pearson, several people who worked on this project commented that as they prepared for it, there was not some of the traditional turf battles or sniping between NASA centers and folks involved in that. Did you get a feel for that everybody kind of came together for this, and could this help carry that on as well to the future?
Well, I think NASA comes together in something like this. It's really satisfying to me that everybody did work together, but we put a lot of attention and a lot of leadership in this to make sure everything came together as quickly as it did.
And for Bob Steek, I had a chance to talk to some of the shuttle processing workers before the mission started, and a couple of them came out right out and said that they thought their jobs really could be on the line for this mission, that it meant that much. You get a sense for that at all for the folks out here and as they prepared for it?
Well, again, this mission had a lot of visibility and a lot of what I would call real-time spectator interest, but we prepare for each of our missions as if everything depended on it. And that's what we keep our focus on, regardless of whether the mission is one like this or the previous 6 that we flew this year. We want to make sure that we deliver a quality product for the crew, who are our ultimate customers, and the flight teams to deal with when they put it on orbit. From that standpoint, you could say people's jobs are on the line, but we stay focused on our responsibilities, and we leave it to the program and the crew and the flight team to execute their part. And one like this, when everything works well, it's a plus for everybody.
Beth Dickey.
Beth Dickey with Reuters for General Pearson. Several times this year, through the numerous delays that some of the missions have had, in the firing room you've been heard telling the launch team that they took the heat off for you, and that Congress would probably be happy with what they had done. I'd like to ask you now, since we've been asking this question since before the mission and most officials have sidestepped it, was NASA's reputation really on the line with this flight? And now that it's over successfully, is NASA free and clear? Is this going to end all the trouble in Congress for you?
No, I don't think it's going to end all. This is not the end all of end alls. I think it's this mission, the success that we demonstrated here, will be helpful in our discussions with Congress. There were some members of Congress that said just as you said, but I'm not convinced that if we had not been quite as successful, that NASA was on the line. Of course, I'll take all success we can get here. It was a wonderful mission, and it shows that we can do what we say we can do.
Jay.
Jay Barbary with NBC for General Pearson. This mission, the best of my recollection in 35 years here, this was the most fascinating mission we've had to cover since the Apollo days. And it captured the imagination of the public again. It showed that you can build a space station in orbit. But yet, I come back to the Cape to learn that there are going to be more layoffs for McDonnell Douglas, for example, who processes your shuttle. We keep hearing about layoffs. Are you going to make any effort, or is Mr. Golden going to make any effort here now to capitalize off of this publicity, try to get somebody to get out in front, bang the drums like they did in the Apollo days, and go for the space station, or are you going to continue with your engineering analysis and this type of thing that we've had in the past years? I suppose I'm being a little critical about the fact that you haven't had a Lee Iacocca out in front selling the space station to Congress, because about every 3 months we have to listen to another vote coming up. At NASA headquarters, are you going to make any effort whatsoever to get out in front and capitalize off this publicity and really go for it?
Well, I hope so, but Dan Golden is right out in front and has been out in front selling the space station, and I think he's really done an effective job. I think this will be helpful in the long run to help us sell this. But we are actively visiting Congress in forums like this, trying to get the word out. I hope it'll get out better because of the success.
You don't seem to be capturing any imagination. You don't seem to be getting the attention of people. We don't hear that much effort. It doesn't seem to be, it seems to be a great engineering effort, but there don't seem to be any any type of PR effort out there like we had back for Apollo. Kennedy led that. Everybody was fascinated with it. When people see something like has just been pulled off on this mission, they're very fascinated with it. And I think you find the American people really support the space program, but there's nothing that seems to be coming out of NASA headquarters that there's any really drive to get behind this. Every 3 months, Congress has to come up and vote on this thing. And as your British partner said to me in answering a question of mine over at ESA the other day, he says, if you ever make up your mind what type of space station you're going to build, we'll be on board with you. And this is another problem. We've got, it looks like a lot of people pulling in a lot of different directions. And I just wondered if there had been any thought given to an orchestrated effort to get out and capitalize on this publicity and the imagination of the public again to really get out and go for it for the space station.
Well, I think you offer some very good advice there. And I think we ought to do that. And I've often said that maybe that's not the best thing we ever do in NASA, but we ought to do better, and I would pass that on to our gentleman here. Yeah, okay.
Sharish?
Sharish Datta with the Orlando Sentinel for Bob. If you could refresh my recollection at least as to how many tankings you had this year and whether it seemed that you worked a whole lot harder for 7 launches this year than you did for 8 last year, and was it frustrating at all, or is it all right because it ended up okay and you got 7 launches off?
Well, it falls in the category that all's well that ends well, but yes, we did have more tankings this year than last year. In fact, the numbers, if you're into numbers, we tanked the vehicle 17 times this year. We went into terminal count and produced 7 safe and successful missions from it. Last year, we tanked half that number of times and flew 8 times, as you know. So I think we had more tests this year, but you don't always have years like in '92 where you, I guess the analogy would be, hit a home run every time you come to bat. And if you analyze the results of our launch count processes this year and the reasons we scrubbed, weather sometimes, hardware sometimes, you look back at that and say, well, the performance was excellent. And the results, of course, are the numbers that really count are 7 safe and successful missions, and sure, they weren't all as spectacular as Hubble, but each one was very important, and each one was executed in an excellent fashion by the crew and the flight team, and that's what makes the team down here feel good and pumped up, and they'll take that into next year with a good feeling.
Let me interrupt at this point to ask if we have any questions for Mr. Brinkley out of JSC. Down here at KSC, did you have one, Bill? I think we better switch you to JSC for this.
Okay, thank you very much. Understand we have a question at the Cape for Randy Brinkley.
Yeah, Bill Harwood again for CBS for Mr. Brinkley. The whole idea of the mission director, obviously, or from what I gather, I guess, worked fairly well on this mission. How widespread should that be? I mean, is that something that would help in every mission, or is that something that you really don't need unless it's a really critical thing like Hubble or maybe dealing with the Russians?
Well, maybe that's a question better asked for General Pearson, but the reorganization of his office, there's a Office of Mission Director that is tasked to deal with the missions of a complex nature, missions that involve international partners and that are over and above the normal mission requirements. And they will be looked at, I'm sure, by General Pearson on a case-by-case basis, and a mission director assigned accordingly. Guy Gardner has been assigned as mission director of the upcoming STS-71, the Mir flights, as an example where a decision was made that that particular mission would require or would benefit from a mission director. So again, maybe I should refer that back to General Pearson because it's pretty much his call.
Any follow-up questions at KSC?
This is Jim McKenna with Aviation Week. What moment during the mission provided the most heartburn for you?
I think the most concern, I won't say it was heartburn, the most concern would be the delay that we had on deployment. Everything had gone so well, and we were tracking right along on our timelines, and we finally got caught up a little bit in something on orbit that slowed us down. It all worked out well, but again, there was some concern on that last day and before we actually deployed.
From KSC. We have no more questions here, Brian.
Okay, thanks, Dick. Any questions here in Houston? Seeing none, we'll turn the satellite back over to you, KSC.
back here. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, it's just that on the mission director slide. Since it's only there for the Russian flight coming up, what other sorts of missions might that entail, or is that all you really see the use for it?
Oh, no. I think down the road, if we have a complicated mission, international, probably the first space station assembly, the Mir docking, that type thing, we'll do that. We'll assess that as we go along. But anything that's out of the ordinary, and they're not all ordinary, but something that is more complicated than usual, I think we'll do that since it's been so successful this time.
Take several more questions. Sue?
This is for General Pearson and maybe for Bob Seek too. Some of the electronic media have been having a good time competing in one-upsmanship, finding flaws. And one of the flaws uncovered by one of the networks was the old problem of the spikes, which goes back to last January. Now, NASA has officially denied that it is a problem, and maybe it isn't. But could we have some comment of, are you investigating further these spikes in the SRBs, and what are you doing about it, in what time frame?
Okay, good. I'm comfortable personally with the pressure spike thing, but as I said before, I welcome any kind of help that we can get. And in this particular case, I've convened a board led by Dr. Faget, who's a well-respected space person, and I expect him to come out and review what we've been through, review all the data, and give his recommendations as to what we should do about this. I expect the results before the next FRR. And I don't expect it to be any different than we have, but as I say, I welcome any kind of outside help, because our first priority is to fly the shuttle safely. And anybody that can help me do that, I welcome it.
Just quick follow-up. Do we understand correctly then that if there's the slightest hiccup, if Max Faget says, let's look a little further, would you delay the next flight?
Yeah, of course.
I have time for a couple more questions. DeGuliano?
For Mr. Seek, how many shuttle launches do you hope to have next year? And do you foresee any changes that might either increase the reliability of the shuttle or the safety margins?
Well, the manifest calls for 8 missions in the calendar year. And right now, in terms of changes in policy requirements or changes to the flight hardware, ground systems, there's not a lot on the books right now. We're looking at things that would make the whole process more efficient and save some money. And of course, in the process of doing that, we make sure that we don't shortcut anything on the safety side. But there's no big block modifications, as it were, or major requirement changes on the books.
We're running long. We're going to take the hands I see it now. There will be Phil, Irene, Todd, and Jim, and that's a wrap. Phil?
Phil Chen for Dan Weidman. Do you think that this mission has helped convince the astronomical community that astronauts can work on spacecraft without damaging them? And what does this mean as far as your other spacecraft which can be serviced? Any thoughts about servicing them in the future?
We don't have any plans to service on orbit any observatories except for the Hubble Space Telescope. It's the only major facility we've built that's designed for human servicing. We will make at least 2 more trips to the Hubble Space Telescope in this decade, roughly 3 years from now and roughly 6 years from now, in order to install upgraded instruments using the very latest in light detection technology. But all of our efforts toward servicing will be directed toward HST. I believe that their community was certainly nervous because they knew this would be a very difficult, very challenging task. I believe that we are now much more comfortable with our plans for the remaining servicing missions for HST, and we'll now proceed full speed on building the instruments for the 1996 servicing mission, because it's clearly now been demonstrated that we can do it successfully, and I believe there'll be no further reservations about whether we should be building new instruments to install on Hubble.
Irene?
For Mr. Seek, a target launch date for STS-60, and for General Pearson, just an update on the future shuttle missions involving Russian participation.
Well, the target for 60 we're working toward now is January 27th, and that presumes that we roll out to the launch pad right before Christmas, and we're still looking at that.
And we're working the manifest on the Russian flights, and there will be up to 10 flights, at least 5, and we're working that right now to see how we optimize those flights.
Todd?
Todd Halverson, Florida Today for Bob Seek. Bob, you haven't given us yet your quick look on the vehicle out on the runway, and I was also wondering if Commander Covey didn't look like he came in a little long on that landing, if you know what the touchdown point was and what the rollout was, if you have any of that data yet.
Well, the landing data they should have by now next door. I didn't have it when I came in here. And as far as the vehicle is concerned, look great. Endeavor always looks great. It's because it's the newest, I guess. But just in a quick walk around, only a couple of tile dings and nothing that looked out of the ordinary. It looked like it flew just great.
Jim, your cleanup man.
For General Pearson, you've had a review of several months of the pressure spike situation that seems to have fairly well characterized the problem. What would warrant delaying a launch if the Fauget review, I mean, what would the Fauget review have to come up with to delay a launch?
Well, I don't see, as I say, I'm very comfortable with it, but I welcome the outside review. In fact, I called for it. But if he finds something that we didn't think of that would warrant looking at it again, then that's what we'll do. But I don't see that happening. I see him reinforcing what we've already come up with.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's a wrap. Let's go home.